Freakcast. I'm Edson Valenzuela.
And I'm Matt Salzer.
And this is episode 20, Matthew.
Yes, episode 20.
Getting long in the tooth. It's been a couple weeks, but we're back at it.
Yes. We had some things we had to take care of in our own personal lives.
Yeah, exactly, as always. And in the duration that we've been away, quite a bit has happened in the MMA world. A couple of events.
Yes, quite a bit.
A couple of events announced, and I don't know. There's a kind of a big piece of news right now. But
first thing first, let's talk about the recent events of this past weekend.
So, what happened this past weekend?
Okay, it was UFC on Fox, Teixeira versus Evans. It was in Tampa, Florida, so they were kind of appealing to local audiences there when they put Rashad, who trains in Florida, as part of the Black Zillions there, and then they also put Tesha Torres in there in the co-main event. She's I think she's with American Top Team, but so they got those two in there. So one of the fights that actually made it onto the televised prelims was John Dodson moving up to Bantamweight again, and he took on Manny Gamburian and beat him in 37 seconds.
How did that go down?
He just went out there and did his business. He went out there, freaking kept punching. Eventually he was nailed Manny, and Manny went down, and he said that he's planning on staying at Bantamweight for a while. And it's understandable why, considering that he basically cannot get past Demetrius Johnson and he does have a win over former champion TJ Dillashaw. So the question there is, can he beat someone at the caliber of Uriah Faber or Dominic Cruz, who will be fighting in Inglewood at UFC 199, which is in our backyard, I may know.
Yeah, it's right near here. And so Dodson able to sort of continue being a dominant force in whatever division he might be in, but is there a ceiling for him?
Yeah, that's the question.
And Manny Gamburian, I don't know how much action he's seen in the last few months. He's sort of a veteran at this point.
He is a veteran, and I really hate to use this term, but I think he's probably more of a gatekeeper. He only fought once last year.
See, so he's sort of not a guy that sees that much action, and he might be sort of at this point on the tail end of his career with such a sort of serious loss against John Dodson.
Yeah, he's 34. He lost to John Dodson. To give him credit, he's the past few years he's had some decent wins, but then again, kind of a lack of competition there. He only fought once in 2012, fought twice in 2013, fought twice in 2014, and then only fought once last year. So he's it's just one of those things where I think he's pretty much marked himself as a gatekeeper, and I doubt that he's really going to get much further. I might be wrong, because we have seen veterans, have a resurgence in their careers. Look at Fabricio Werdum. But, I don't think he's really going to get much farther than that. So,
what else? What other match from that night was of note?
Well, let's see. Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is a tough Brazil veteran, he took out Court McGee, who won the Ultimate Fighter. Raquel Pennington beat Bete Correa in what was a very close match. Those two women went at it, and this is Correa's first loss, or first fight since losing to Ronda Rousey late last year. Okay. Michael Chelsea beat Benil Dariush. Chelsea is also a tough winner. Submitted him in the second round, rear naked choke. Cub Swanson, for almost the first time in a year, came back and beat Hakrin Diaz. Hakran, who is a teammate of Jose Aldo out of Nova União. And Then probably one of the more notable fights, Kabhi Nurmagomedov, whose last win was almost 2 years ago against current lightweight champ Rafael Dos Anjos, beat Daryl Horcher, who came in on short notice. And I think it was like 8 days notice or something like that. And put up a pretty good fight. But Khabib is just a different animal. And he's probably arguably one of the better grapplers of in MMA. And that just goes to the whole wrestling atmosphere that's in Russia. If there's one country that has better wrestling than the United States, it's gonna be Russia, Russia, those former Soviet countries, because
competitive wrestling,
competitive wrestling, because they just built that up during the Soviet era, and it just has not gone away. And wrestling is an easy sport for maintenance. I mean, in terms of viability, all you need is a pair of shoes and shorts and t-shirt. That's what you need. Everything else works itself out. Then in the co-main event, you had Thug Rose Namajunas take on Tecia Torres. As I said, Ticia's a local girl. Both of them competed in the Ultimate Fighter Season 20. And Rose, this is actually a rematch of when they were in Invicta, and Tecia was still the more experienced fighter, and Rose was, I think it was probably one of her first 3 fights, but they went out there and Rose actually avenged her loss in Invicta. So it was a pretty close fight.
Cool to see a girl fight be the co-main event of a free fight card.
Especially UFC on Fox, yeah. So, and then the main event, Glover Teixeira went out and knocked out Rashad Evans in the first round, and it was one of those knockouts that went pretty quickly.
Oh wow!
It was one of those things where he rocked him, and then if you looked at it, if you looked away, you'd miss it. And it was one of those things where it's also a flash knockout, because you could tell Rashad was down, but then he was up on his feet again like 20 seconds later. So
they still got to stop it though.
Yeah, but it was understandable. It wasn't one of those things where he didn't remember. I think he realized that he was
out. Yeah,
because he woke up on the ground. So it was one of those things where he realized, I got knocked out. So
so what does that mean? I mean, Glover Teixeira has been a consistent contender in the division, in the light heavyweight division. He's already faced the true king of the light heavyweight division, that is John Jones.
Yes.
He did fight him to a decision.
Yeah, but Jones dominated the fight.
He completely and totally.
Yeah, it was pretty much one-side domination. And it was one of those things where Teixeira's just such a tough guy that Jones couldn't.
But you do see these, you do see these flashes of brilliance from Teixeira. You do see these sort of big fights that he's able to pull out. And Rashad, given he's past his prime, he's still an ex-light heavyweight champion for the UFC. He's the Ultimate Fighter alum. He's by no means a slouch. And, you can't help but think it puts Teixeira in a slightly better position. And maybe one day if John Jones was to move on up to heavyweight division, Teixeira might be one of the guys that could step in and maybe be one of the one of the more serious light heavyweight contenders. Has he ever faced Daniel Cormier?
He has not, as far as I remember. He has not.
See, that'd be a good one.
I'm just double checking the record. Yeah, he's not. He has not faced Daniel Cormier. But yeah, that definitely would be a good fight.
And I mean, what are some matchups that you might put Teixeira in now? I mean, has he faced Ovin St. Preux yet?
He has. He has definitely done that. And Prue is fighting for the interim title. It was actually his first fight because he went on a 2-fight skid. He lost to Phil Davis right after he lost to John Jones, and that was his first win after that. So, and I remember that one. It was technical submission. That was one of those things where St. Preux actually never tapped out. He literally went to sleep. Kind of like how, except unlike Holly Holm, he wasn't flailing about
trying to find any desperate sort of out.
I still can't help but kind of laugh at how people have said, Heart of a Champion, Holly Holm doesn't have, Conor McGregor does. She was just flailing about. Goes,
yeah, that was that. I wonder.
This is his he's now on a 3-fight winning streak.
And again, I wonder if that puts him in title contention.
Yeah, quite possibly.
It speaks to, again, the rosters in the UFC get run a little thin. The same sort of cream rises to the top over and over again. But this was definitely an impressive win against a veteran fighter who was, like I said, ex-champion. So we'll see where that does take, what road that takes Teixeira down. I mean, he's also, I think, the only iconic sort of Brazilian in the light heavyweight division. Which, from a marketing standpoint, I mean, can you think of another 205er that's...
Shogun, but he's towards the end of his... Yeah, he's on his way out.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if Little Nog is officially retired yet. His brother definitely is, but yeah.
Similar sort of situation there, though, where it's, definitely late in his career.
But yeah, Teixeira is definitely one of the more marketable fighters in the division. There might be younger guys, but at 36, he's definitely one of the more marketable, still relevant guys.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a for sure thing. So
how'd you rate that the fight card? I mean, it was a free fight card.
It was pretty good. You had some good fights and had a bunch of finishes. And one of the interestingly enough, what was given the fight of the night was the opening fight, which I did not see.
Which would not have been that was on Fight Pass?
Yeah, it was on Fight Pass. It was Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos versus Omari Akhmedov.
What division are these fellows in?
These guys are welterweights. So
put on quite a barn burner, huh?
Yeah. The thing is that with those Fight Pass guys, with any prelim, if you're on the prelim, you're one of two things. You're a gatekeeper or you're up and comer. And if you're an up and comer, you want to make a name for yourself. So these guys obviously made a name for themselves. If most people did not see this, I mean, you had the prelims on Fox where John Dodson was able to make it on because you had an early finish, and then you had, but that was about it. So these guys made a statement by becoming,
winning their fight of the night and not even really being on the main card.
Right. Whereas you had Teixeira and Telcia get the performance of the night, obviously. Yeah, it was a pretty good fight. Teixeira came away with Rashad came away with the most money with that one.
So we're all caught up with the UFC on Fox, and I did want to seg into very quickly, and we could just chat about it because there's really, right now, it's very fresh news, and there's really not much to say.
Yes.
Other than to sit here in disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it had been a couple of days now that it had been announced that Conor McGregor was not going to be fighting at UFC 200.
Right. He did not fulfill press obligations for UFC 200, and then he says on his Twitter
and this is very
bombshell.
Recent. Yeah, and that was essentially, I don't know what the quote is exactly, but something along the lines of, thanks for the money, I'm out of here.
Yeah, the statement was, I've decided to retire young. And
that's something that's incredible, especially after Conor McGregor had sort of established himself as the new face of the UFC in so many ways. His one-punch knockout of Jose Aldo.
MMA junkies posing the question: is it legit or a troll job? Might be trolling.
And this is on the heels of sort of a legendary.
I've decided to retire young. Thanks for the tease. Catch you later.
And this is sort of on the heels of a legendary victory against Jose Aldo, and And then a somewhat embarrassing.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
That's what happens when you go on something and there we go.
Thanks for that, Matt.
No, what's wrong here?
Just mute the laptop. Just mute the laptop. Muting the laptop.
Okay. Spontaneity.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at that tweet. It was yesterday. Yeah. So.
And Dana White is doing his thing and sort of trying to reassure people that if McGregor gets in contact with him relatively soon, that he won't be stripped of the title and that they might be able to work something out. Still, though, sort of bizarre behavior from Conor McGregor, sort of indicative of how unpredictable UFC and mixed martial arts as a industry can be.
Yeah, definitely.
And really the losers again, the fight fans.
Yeah,
they're the losers. We had already a 145 interim championship bout set up. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the Jose Aldo,
Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo. A lot of people are saying that Aldo's going to win that one.
Mm-hmm. And you
a little far to be seen, because to be fair, I don't think Frankie took a whole load of a lot of damage in their first meeting, and it's possible that it's very possible that Aldo might have, like so many fighters that have been so dominant over the years, it's possible Aldo might have that little stick in his brain.
And sticking with the Conor retirement for just another second, it leaves Nate Diaz in a tough spot, leaves those that believe that they were going to go see that main event at UFC 200 in a tough spot, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to you don't want to judge Conor too much in that he has every right to retire whenever he feels like. There have been a couple of articles that have mentioned that it might be a ploy in order for him to get more money, maximize the amount of money that he gets, which that's something that's sort of been his
thing.
He's emphasized, he wants to get as much value out of all of his work per fight every time, right? And
that is true.
It's weird though. You still can't. So if you're looking at it with a critical eye, though, you wonder: was he scared? Did he know that maybe this was too tough in order for him to be able to get through? He had already been defeated once by Nate Diaz. In a lot of ways, I think that their styles maybe just don't mesh well for Conor.
They do not, because Conor's this guy who's like technical, and I'm going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you, whereas Nate is this I'm going to pick my punches, but I'm going to pick them in excess, and I can take a lot of damage. Whereas, as we know, Conor got so desperate in that fight when he was taking all the damage that he went in for a takedown, which is not a specialty.
Yeah.
The ground game is not a specialty. He is a stand-up fighter. We all know this. He was arguably in danger multiple times against Chad Mendes, and Mendes didn't have that, had him, a few weeks of a training camp or something like that?
And the fight was to occur at 155 this time, is that right? Or was it back at welterweight again?
I'd like to say it was back at welterweight.
See, and if it was at welterweight again, you can't help but wonder if that works against McGregor, given that his natural fighting frame is at 145, and that this is bumping up not just one, but two weight divisions above what he usually fights. And also, Nate Diaz's body and his height is sort of more suited for larger weight divisions. He's a taller dude. He's got a lengthier frame. He's fought more at 155 and 170 than McGregor has. And now McGregor steps away, and you can't help but wonder, was he apprehensive? Did he maybe think it was a bad idea to go immediately, even though all sources indicated that he was the one who had insisted on a rematch? Is that right? You never know. You never know if it was Dana White trying to sort of put something together, kind of striking while the iron's hot and all.
Yeah, probably more the latter.
And
because I don't know of anybody who wanted that rematch fight. I really don't know of anybody else. Everyone was saying Conor should go back down to featherweight and defend his title. That's what everyone was saying, because it's pointless for him to go against a big lightweight again, and then of course that just shot the legitimacy of talks of his going up to lightweight and fight Rafael dos Anjos, because a lightweight contender beat him.
The first fight was also a circumstantial deal, right? Where what ended up happening there? He was actually supposed to fight who? McGregor was supposed to fight somebody else that fight. Isn't that right? And
he was going to fight for the lightweight title against Rafael
there you are.
dos Anjos.
Yes. You just got done saying that. I'm so sorry. And that fight came about sort of by surprise, and McGregor took on the challenge. This all just seems, I don't know, kind of out of character for him. I mean, you kind of wonder what the relationship between him and the UFC is. You've seen before fighters not really, or butt heads with Dana White.
Well, he was already kind of dropping hints of like saying that I'm going to promote my own fights and whatnot, and kind of like Floyd Mayweather style, which doesn't really work.
Realistic.
It doesn't really work in an environment where titles are more promotional based than regulatory body based. In boxing, it's completely different because all the major titles are regulatory based, and they jump from boxing promotion to boxing promotion just depending on who's doing it. Like Mayweather, he's got his own fights. He does all the promoting. And the regulatory commissions basically just go with the flow.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, well, as long as he's a legitimate fighter, sure, let's put on the fight.
Yeah.
So,
well. And so,
whereas that doesn't work in MMA. There's been attempts to do that in MMA, but the main thing is that the UFC's never really been on board with that.
Yeah, no, the UFC's always trying to sort of consolidate their power.
Yeah, UFC's always consolidated their power. They're always saying we're number one. Even when Pride was ruling as well, it was still MMA's always been promotion based. It's a very different sport from boxing, not just in terms of the fighting style, but also because of how the basis for the fights. Because they've always, as I said, it's all been promotion-based. All the major titles come out of promotions, whereas in boxing, the major titles come out of regulatory commissions. I mean, it's have we ever had a California state MMA champion? Otherwise, that was not in an amateur setting. Yeah. I mean, we just don't have that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very. Very, 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 very different.
And arguments have been made that maybe a more similar model to boxing would benefit the fighters, if not the fight fans, in terms of.
Well, if and we talked about this earlier. The last podcast we talked about the possibility that the UFC might sell the Fertitas might sell the UFC to, I forget which Chinese company. Have not heard anything about that since then. I think that maybe it was just an idea that got bounced around in the UFC brass ball and never happened again. But something, I was recently talked with Robert Samo. Shout out to Robert at Fanboy Nation. Robert R.C. Hamo or Samo. Yeah. But anyways, so we were having a conversation recently, and we talked about how one of the more beneficial things that might happen to MMA as a whole is if, say, the UFC does go up for sale, not a Chinese company buy it out, but Viacom, who owns Bellator, and you oust Dana White in that buyout and put Scott Coker in. Scott Coker's always been this bigger picture guy. It's like he'd be the perfect guy because he cares more about the fighters and the fight fans than Dana White ever has. Dana White is all about UFC. He's thinking about the brand. He's not thinking about MMA as a whole, well, to a degree. But
well, and you could to be fair, you could justify that Dana White's approach is that he thinks, first of all, he thinks he knows best. and second of all, that he thinks that what is best for the UFC is what is best for MMA, and
which has kind of made him the Vince McMahon of.
Yeah, a lot of people do not agree with that. A lot, there are many people that think, a more
and he's butted heads with the press at times. There's been times where he just told press people shut up and egged them on and stuff like that. So he's not always been the most press friendly guy.
Yeah, no, and also, I mean, now I think we're kind of further away from a time now, I think, where there were dream matches in which the promotional sort of aspect was what came between certain fighters fighting one another. Now, unless
we're talking about Bellator guys, but
really, but most of the marquee fighters that are up and comers or currently dominant are already in the UFC anyhow.
Right.
Bellator has been doing a good job of poaching elite fighters from the UFC. Oftentimes, though,
I'd argue the biggest signing to date has probably been Benson Henderson, but he was kind of already, floating around number 5, maybe was still within the top 10. No, definitely within the top 10. But I think the UFC lost interest in really marketing him a while back. So I don't think they viewed it necessarily as a loss. But the Bellator has been poaching people off. You're definitely right. And I think that's also partially because of the fact that you've got for kind of these mid-range fighters, especially when it's where for these kind of more mid-range fighters who probably some of the motivation there is the sponsorships, because these are fighters who probably could benefit more from sponsorships than they could because of the Reebok deal. But because of the Reebok deal, these sponsors aren't really willing to back them anymore. As a result, they're getting the Reebok money and they're getting the UFC money. That's about it. But they could be making a bit more. So I think also, the sponsorships is probably also a little bit of a motivation there as well. And I don't know if there's, there was that time when they almost snatched Gilbert Melendez, and that was very close. That was very close to happening. And Dana White went in at the last minute and said, "We'll match your contract." So this there's been competitive. And that was after he said Gilbert's never going to come back to the UFC, and then he forced his hand almost. Yeah, he forced his hand almost. So I think, and then also since then he's taken that strategy of signing kind of big name fighters. Tried to steal Rampage away from him, but then of course there's been that whole incident where Bellator said, "Wait a minute. You signed an exclusive contract with us. You have not fulfilled that contract. You cannot do this." Yeah. And they ended up, in a settlement. Rampage is back with Bellator. Regardless, and this is not the Eddie Alvarez situation. I've said that multiple times. It's not the Eddie Alvarez situation where Alvarez was done with his contract and basically. And this is something else I talked with Robert about. Not to badmouth Bjorn Remniel very much, because he definitely did make something out of Bellator from basically nothing. But one of the problems is that he had some, I'd say, almost shady business practices. One of which was the whole Eddie Alvarez thing, where basically Eddie had a contract. And then they said, "Oh, we'll match it." And they basically took the copy of the UFC contract that Eddie supplied to them and basically took out UFC and put Bellator in there. And that was that. But then Eddie's like, "Wait a minute, I did not sign on for this." And then there was that whole thing where he was out for over a year because of legal disputes, and then that was kind of a little bit more of a shady situation right there, where Eddie was legitimately done with his contract, and he was not the champion. But I think the thing there was that Bjorn just didn't want him to go to the UFC. This is not that situation. Rampage signed a contract with Bellator and just plainly has not finished up with it. He did not get a release, and then he goes and signs an exclusive contract with the UFC. And Bellator had every right to basically say, no, you cannot do this, and go through the court system. And we all know Rampage has kind of been this kind of had that temperamental weird.
It's interesting that in 2016 we're still sort of going over these same discussions of is the UFC doing what is best for MMA? Are the fight fans getting cheated by this being sort of fragmented by promotions and not really seeing the best fights that they can see? I think it's to a lesser degree now,
and another thing is that, of course, we've mentioned the Reebok deal. Reebok deal is still not popular with fans or MMA fighters.
It all still seems like it's like they're still getting their footing underneath them and how they're going to.
Yeah, and
what's the best way to handle paying fighters, dealing with sponsorships?
And this has been going on for let's see, we're almost at May. That's almost 8 months or 9-10 months that this deal's been in effect, and they're still having issues with it.
And I don't know.
So,
I mean, do you know what numbers the UFC's been doing? How well the pay-per-views have been selling in the last year?
My understanding is it's been doing actually pretty good. They've actually had some good fights. I can't remember if it was I forgot. Was there a fight? What was that fight with Rousey? And wasn't there one where? Yeah, it was the one where there was the last pay-per-view with Conor McGregor, and then there was the one Rousey Holm. Those two actually did pretty well, and
whenever the
they're still doing pretty good in terms of pay-per-view.
Yeah, whenever the pay-per-view numbers and the gates are well, and sometimes they could be overwhelmingly sort of. They bring in a lot of money. I mean that's when.
Well, and then they also had that record set. The Rousey fight, that was a record-setting event in Australia. That was the highest attendance they've ever had.
That's when
inside a soccer stadium.
When things like that happen, that's when the press and fight fans sort of start to have these ideas and thoughts of, well, what is the disparity here? Exactly how much money are the UFC execs pocketing compared to what the fighters are making, and really them being the faces of and the reason that those that are buying the fights and going to the fights are doing so.
Well, yeah. Speaking of which, let's. I'm looking at the UFC on Fox payouts. Let's see. Obviously, main eventers. They both got 6 digits. Rashad, despite losing, got the biggest payout. He got $150,000. And Glover, with a win bonus, got $120,000. Rose, I'd say, got a pretty good amount at 86, but that was with a win bonus. Khabib, he's one of the top contenders, got a win bonus. His opponent, probably because he was making his debut, only got 12,000. I'm looking at that scale, and it's just kind of like, is this really what these guys are getting? And I'm just, but yeah, that kind of makes you wonder: can these guys be making more? And can the UFC be tossing around a little bit more? Especially considering what some of those other sports do. I know that argument that the UFC is still a younger sports league and it's still establishing itself. Understand that, but
those pay-per-view sales are the sales of a well-established entity. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Not to mention
shows are.
Not to mention the bigger name guys. They're getting pay-per-view bonuses. Most of the fighters do not get pay-per-view bonuses. It's the well-established fighters like Conor McGregor. I can guarantee he's getting pay-per-view bonuses. Ronda Rousey, I can guarantee he's getting pay-per-view bonuses. Some of these other people, I can guarantee they're getting pay-per-view bonuses. But I
have in front of me right here, the number one MMA gate of last year, or rather ever, I think, ever, is Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Paid attendance of 15,648 people and gross sales at over $10 million.
And that was because it was Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo.
And that's just the gate. You know, that's not even counting the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they also get gate bonuses as well. And you got to also think about that as well. I'm sure that they've got all these bonus structures because names bring in fans.
Yeah.
But for these other people, it's kind of like
and when you compare it to a boxing fight where it's pretty well established leading into the fight exactly how much money both fighters are going to make, you know, it sort of does leave this element of uncertainty maybe for the fighters in that, you know, okay, well, you know, I don't know if I'm going to get knockout of the night. I don't know if I'm going to get performance of the night. I don't know if I'm going to get fight of the night. You know, so I don't know exactly how much I'm going to make in terms of bonuses. I don't know until, you know, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of bonuses until the back end of everything happening. And yet it's still, the MMA still continues to be one of the more popular sports. MMA still continues to be one of the main, or one of the sources of highest selling pay-per-view events.
And it's amazing how it's been able to rise in spite of the fact that we're still technically in a recession. I don't care about what economists say. We're still technically in a recession. But anyways, enough with economy and politics. But yeah, it's definitely one of those rising sports, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I'm wondering, and, you know, if there's anything I've noticed is that MMA seems to be going in these types of waves. You know, people are saying that there's going to be a point where it's just a novelty and it's you know, the bubble's going to bust at some point. But it seems like that's kind of been almost a pattern in and of itself, because when it first came on and it was no holds barred in the early to mid 90s, there was it rode this huge wave. It was all popular, and then of course there was a whole political crackdown, and it's like then it seemed to go into a dip, then it seemed to go back up shortly after the you know, Fertitta's bought out the UFC and whatnot, and then of course there's also the whole Pride UFC rivalry. There seemed to be a wave there. Then it's like shortly after the Pride buyout, and it still may have been a little bit of high, but then went to a little bit of dip. Then of course you had all these competitors pop up: Bodog Fight, IFL, just Affliction, Strike Force, Elite XC. Yeah. All these promotions seem to rise up. It seems like there was another wave, because you have to remember that's when MMA first went on primetime network television with Elite XC. It wasn't the UFC that got on there; it was Elite XC. So, which I think is going to be forever going to be a thorn in Dana White's side. But you know, there was that wave there. Then it kind of dipped off when all these promotions are either failing or being bought out and stuff like that. Now it seems like we're on another rise again, mainly because of the fact that with the failure of, with the buyout of Strike, with the buyout of Strike Force,
all other promotions.
Yeah, with the failure of all these other promotions, you had Strike Force, out of Strike Force, you got Ronda Rousey, arguably one of the biggest stars. Then you had Conor McGregor. Both those people have kind of contributed to where we're at another high. And then now we've also had another rise of other legitimate rivals. Bellator was kind of forming back when all these promotions were starting to fail. So Bellator rose out of these ashes. Some of the fighters, I think Hector Lombard was one of those guys who were signed from Elite XC. So Bellator rose out of these ashes to where they're kind of almost legitimately contending with the UFC right now. So, and you have World Series of Fighting, who's on NBC Sports, and I'd argue that it's possible that we may actually, it's just another boom. It's another boom period, definitely. And of course, I'd argue that it's possible that this is probably the best time to be watching MMA, because you've got all these regional fights going on. You've got all these regional fights. ESPN3, believe it or not, actually puts on shows quite a bit of regional fights. Access TV also definitely. UFC Fight Pass to fill in their stuff. They put in they show all these regional fight cards. Then you've got and of course you've got the UFC. You've got Bellator. You've got World Series of Fighting. It's arguably one. I'd argue that this is probably as mainstream as MMA has probably gotten so far.
Yeah.
If you look at the bigger side of, if you look at the big picture,
right.
there was you could also make the argument that maybe around the time that you had IFL up on My Network 13, Bodog Fight was on IM Television, Elite XC was on CBS, on Showtime. Maybe you could make that argument that maybe those also
some
times
of those
as well.
some of those were still smaller affiliate sort of channels, or once every Elite XC was sort of, those shows would come as they sort of, they would put them on as they sort of came down the pipe. They wouldn't really have a set schedule of when they were going to be doing a show on Fox, or when they were
That
going to
is
be
true.
doing a show on Showtime.
That is true. Whereas nowadays,
yes.
you have regular schedules with all the three major
and it's become commonplace, right?
Yeah.
People know where to find it. They know where to find it. They know that they could count on one every now and then on said channel. And you're right in what you're saying, in that right now it is the most mainstream. Well, still, I think not exactly oversaturating the market.
Oh, except for that time back, last year where the UFC was putting, with Fight Pass and stuff like that, they were putting on fights
multiple times a month.
Yeah, we're talking like almost a fight every weekend.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think maybe it was a little oversaturated. At that point, I think it was a little oversaturated. Maybe at that point, maybe Fox and the UFC realized, I think we're pushing this a little bit. Mm-hmm. At which point they started to pull back. Whereas, the more like this year, except for maybe those big boom periods, like, today, last weekend we had UFC on Fox. This weekend we're going to be seeing UFC 198. I know 197. We're going to be seeing UFC 197. And then we do have the UFC on Fox fight cards, once or twice a month. But we're not being oversaturated at this point as MMA fans. It can be a little overwhelming, especially as I've said before, when they put on kind of these mediocre fight cards where maybe they have one or two big names and then the rest of them are basically, you might as well call them a contenders fight card.
Yeah.
That's what what the Show XC and Show MMA fights where they were rising contenders. Well, you might as well call some of the UFC fight nights those fight cards, because these guys are all contenders. Yeah. Most of them are not in the top 15 because that's what the UFC rankings are, top 15. It's like, yeah, I don't recognize too many of these guys.
And I mean, unless you're a true MMA fan, then.
Well, I'm a true MMA fan, and we can point to World Series of Fighting 28, where I didn't even know most of the guys on the fight card.
Yeah.
Except for Marlon Moraes and Jamie Yeager.
And that shows you just sort of the almost the niche aspect of the sport, and that those that follow it will find a way to watch some, but may not always but the cards that are being put on might not always be the most mainstream or popular fighters that are on there, right?
That is true.
So what do you got? What do you got lined up? Moving on from
the whole Conor McGregor and the greater UFC. That whole thing. Okay, so something else kind of related to this last weekend is that there was supposed to be a match between Dan Henderson and Yoto Machida. I can't remember if that was going to be I can't remember if that was supposed to be the main event or the co-main event, but that fight was up in there. Both fighters were pulled from the fight because Machida actually tested positive for a banned substance. And he to his credit has stated he did not know that the substance was a banned substance. Okay. So and he's basically not really making he's making he's claiming ignorance. He's apologizing for it, and he's saying that he's taking responsibility for his actions. He's gonna take whatever they hand to him, which gives him credit, shows him what kind of fighter he is. He was let's see, he used a supplement containing C-keto DHEA, which it just says it's an anabolic agent, which doesn't necessarily mean it's an anabolic steroid. It just means that, it could be anything that just helps in stamina or something like that. But either way,
it's a
so either way, he took something that he was not supposed to. He's owning up to it. So credit to him. I think Dan Henderson is going to be. My understanding is Dan Henderson is going to be rebooked with another opponent for a future fight card,
but not that fight card.
No, it was UFC on Fox. So he's been rebooked for. I can't remember if they said UFC 197 or if it's going to be something else. But he will be fighting another. Hector Lombard. They specifically say he's going to be facing Hector Lombard. So Lombard's going back up to middleweight, and they're fighting at UFC 199. And the question here is Lombard going to go out there and pretty much put Dan Henderson into retirement, or is Henderson going to show that he's still got something to offer? Which Lombard's pretty dangerous because he was the first Bellator middleweight champion. Yeah. So, granted, he was, defeating guys who were kind of they were either undersized or were gatekeepers. But still, Lombard is not someone to be taken lightly. So Henderson would be wise to train for this guy pretty seriously. And I think that if we get UFC, if we get credentials to get into UFC 199, that would be a nice thing to.
Oh yeah, that'd definitely be a fun one to take in.
Yeah, that'd definitely be. So yeah, there's that, and then okay, so this was just a general talk about PED usage. So a while back, Yoel Romero, it was reported that Yoel Romero had tested positive for something.
This is a popular Cuban light heavyweight fighter.
Yes, who's also been well known because of the fact that he's very outspoken Christian. So which I admire, but then I was kind of like, oh dear. So what's going on here? So as it turns out, what happened was he tested positive for something. I don't, it's called a growth hormone release stimulator is what it's called. He tested positive for it, but he was taking a supplement that, as it turns out, it was not listed as one of the ingredients. Not only did this come up in the supplement sample that he provided, but it came up in an unopened version of the supplement. They got it from the provider, and it came up, and it was not in the. So what happened is the US ADA is basically saying they came to an agreement. Since he did test positive for it, he's going to be suspended for 6 months, but my understanding is he's not going to be fined, and he's not going to the results not overturned, which I think is fair. He did test positive for something, but he was taking something unknowingly. So I think that's kind of a fair. I think that's a fair settlement there, and then it also doesn't really compromise his integrity as a fighter. Mm-hmm. So, which I think is kind of unusual. You have these fighters who claim that this happened, but this is the first time that it's actually happened. And he's also said that he's actually going to sue the supplement company. Because
this is Machida that's going to.
No, this is Romero.
Sorry.
This is Yoel Romero. Yeah, Machida.
For not having it under the listed ingredients.
Right, for not having it under the listed ingredients. He was taking it thinking, okay, I'm not going to test positive for something, and then he tests positive for something. And it's because of the fact that the supplement company's not listing this in the ingredients. So, I think it was pretty much thrown into a bad situation there. And like I said, it's unfortunate, but I hope they're still going to consider him as in the title contender picture, because he was supposed to be next in line for the title shot. Instead, the guy who he beat, Ronaldo Souza, is going to be fighting Vitor Belfort at UFC 198 in Brazil, and then that's supposed to be a title contender fight right there. So theoretically, I'd hope that theoretically he's still in the title picture. Maybe another win, but we'll see there. Well, it's just it's like I said, he was thrown into a bad situation there. So.
Yeah, and banned substances in sports continue to be an issue, not just in MMA, in many sports, and so to have this sort of thing continue to happen on a semi-regular basis is sort of discouraging, and I think there are a lot of fighters in the industry that are a little bit outspoken about their feelings about this sort of thing, but really it's, I mean, like you're saying, if there are some supplements that fighters are always going to be taking products that are going to maybe hopefully give them an edge, or hopefully give them an edge in training, and that's not something that's uncommon. It's really their ability to sort of be shady about it, their ability to sort of, like you said, play ignorant and be like, I didn't know that, I did, and one can never really know for sure.
Yeah, but this is a case where it's truly ignorant.
With
Romero's case, whereas with Machida's case, it came out, but with Romero's case, if it's not listed in the ingredients, he doesn't really know.
What if he takes it knowing that it's there and not listed in the ingredients? What if now
we're just speculating?
We're speculating, reckless speculation for fun. But what if it's a case of, hey, I know that, like, we know this product is this, and the benefit of this thing is the fact that it's not listed on the ingredients, so you cannot incriminate yourself in such a way.
I'm not gonna go. You won't go that far? I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not. That's not a game I'm playing. I'm not going that far. I'm not going down that road.
And so now, I mean, what else you got? What else you got there?
Okay, so it is the day that, so today, tonight, the Ultimate Fighter season 24 comes out, or 23. Season 23, it's Team Joanna versus Team Claudia, and that's what they did that because I'm sure Team Jurchik versus Team Gadilla would be a little bit. It's not as pronounceable.
That's funny.
Yeah, so so the
my girl season it tough.
Yeah. So and this one's looking to be a little heated. Those two have a clear-cut rivalry. So and this is going to culminate in the finale on July 8th in at Las Vegas. Of course, it's one of those culminating events of the International Fight Week, which includes amateur MMA, amateur kickboxing, some amateur wrestling competitions, amateur jiu-jitsu. It's just and the fan expo and just so many different things going on during International Fight Week. This is just one of several things. Let's see. It's Team Joanna and Team Claudia, and the previews that I've been seeing, they're getting in their face. I don't know from day one, but they're definitely getting. There's heated. It's definitely a heated rivalry. It's two alpha females that are, going out there. And let's see. So they're doing women's strawweights and light heavyweights is going to be the and I'm not really seeing any familiar names out there except Ashley Yoder. We interviewed her.
Yeah, we did. She'll be on there, huh?
Yeah, wait a minute. Didn't she fight at featherweight?
I don't recall. don't recall.
I thought she fought at kind of a heavier weight class.
But she's out of Team Quest Temecula. They probably have a pretty good relationship with the UFC.
Oh yeah, because they got Dan Henderson and whatnot. So
so yeah,
that
should a little
should.
bit of action there.
Yeah,
we'll talk
let's
to her again soon.
Yeah, let's see how far she can get. And of course, one of those people that got in with the ground floor with her before this.
Yes,
So,
indeed. When she was just coming up.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully she makes it past the first round. If not, maybe we could try securing a interview with her a little bit sooner than that, because then she would. That way, she wouldn't know what's going on, and even if
Yeah.
We'll see. See, Ashley Cummings is probably the only other name that I recognize, and that's because she's she fights out of Invicta. She's an Invicta fighter. So she's fought a few times. So she's now going to appear on the and she's gonna be on that season. Of course, this first this first round is the first episode or two is gonna be all it's gonna be all content.
Elimination sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be the eliminations. Winner gets in the house, loser goes home. With unless there's like an injury or they do what they did last season, where maybe they bring one person from each team out. Or back. And of note is that for the trials, they also had women's bantamweights, but my understanding was the turnout from women's bantamweights wasn't that great, which is why they're doing.
They just abandoned
it. They typically do that. They typically advertise turnouts for like 3 weight classes. And then they
see what goes best.
Yeah, and see what goes best. That's typically what they do. So this isn't uncommon. Obviously, the women's bantamweights didn't have that great of a turnout. That was my understanding. So it's not a failure necessarily. Yeah, it's not a failure. It's just that they best 2 out of 3 weight classes. And of course they still have women in the house. So, and typically women have been kind of the more drawing.
Those seasons of The Ultimate Fighter tend to be popular.
Yeah, these seasons have tended to be a little bit more popular. So so we got that going on.
That's starting tonight.
Yeah, that's starting tonight. So it'll be interesting to see how that how this season goes. It'll definitely be interesting to see how this season goes, especially when as I said before, you have 2 alpha females who do not like each other clearly. So that's that, and then I also heard. I did not hear. I read something about what they're already making plans for season 24, and apparently it's going to be a little bit of a rehash of almost like season 4 of The Ultimate Fighter, which was the comebacks season.
Okay.
So they're
And
it's going to be similar. I'm not sure if they're having former UFC fighters or what the deal is, but they're the ultimate goal is a flyweight title fight. That's what. Yeah, they're gonna have at least veteran fighters going in and competing for a flyweight. And my understanding is they're aiming for kind of more younger fighters. So it's possible that they may be throwing in some unknowns in there, and then as I said, the winner gets a title shot. So that should be interesting. And the flyweight champ is Mighty Mouse.
Yes, I should know that off the top of my head. I don't know why I forget that.
Yes.
And really, what that is trying to build up some sort of hype for a flyweight bout in a division that Mighty Mouse has pretty easily dominated.
Yeah, he's the only champion so far, and he's pretty much dominated the division since day one. And he's only gotten better because he's finished guys who in rematches in the first time he maybe went to a decision or something like that. Defeated Ian McCall, defeated Joseph Benavidez. So it's kind of, and now he's fighting Henry Cejudo this next weekend. So it's kind of like we'll get a little bit more into that later. But it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of like, what do we do with? And then on top of that, we are seeing that the UFC's kind of been willing to experiment a little bit more with the season. I mean, before this last season, they had with Conor McGregor and Faber, they had the team, the Black Zillions versus American Top Team, because they're trying to figure out what they could do with the season. So this is obviously another one of those rehashes where they're experimenting, seeing what can we do with it.
How well does the flyweight division lend itself to comeback theme anyhow? I mean,
which is why I think they're doing. Which is why I said
just cobbling guys together that are already on their roster and putting them in a tournament in the form of a UFC season.
Which is why I said it's kind of more of a rehash. But I think my understanding is it's probably more contenders who are not in the UFC.
And how many of those are there?
Well, there's guys out there.
Okay.
So they'll I don't know if it's gonna be invite only, if these are like proven guys, proven guys out there, but they're gonna be throwing them into the
house and seeing how.
Yeah. Let's see if I could find something that's a little bit more
concrete.
Yeah, a little bit more concrete about it. Yeah, because I'm just. And of course, of other note is that the next season of Latin America is going to be Chuck Liddell versus Forrest Griffin.
Will they be fighting?
No, this isn't going to be a fight. This is just going to be two legends coaching opposite each other, which they have. They've coached opposite each other before, and Liddell actually came. The two times that Liddell has coached opposite Randy Couture and Tito Ortiz, his guys won, and then the one time that Forrest Griffin coached, his guy won. So they do have success, and they're being brought back out again. So we'll see how that whole thing goes.
Two company men.
Yes, two company men. That's probably one of the reasons why they're being brought back out. So.
So what other info can you gather from the flyweight Ultimate Fighter season? Maybe any early roster additions?
That's interesting. They canceled the April 25th open tryouts.
Maybe pushing it back just a little bit.
Yeah, probably doing that.
So it's still really early on for this iteration of the Ultimate Fighter.
Open casting call for the Ultimate Fighter for the last show would be 16 flyweights with winner receiving a title shot. And it was not clear if it was current UFC fighters or only outside. Okay, so it's pretty vague right now.
Okay, still early on. All right, so moving on from tonight's The Ultimate Fighter, what else you got for us, man?
Okay, so other things on the so now we're gonna go to from previewing shows to previewing events. The first of which is going to be let's save the best for last.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to be doing is previewing Bellator 153, and this is going to be significant because it's going to be the promotional debut of Benton Henderson. We mentioned him earlier. So this is also coming just off of the heels last weekend of not just Bellator's Italy debut. This is the first time they've gone overseas for any event. Not only is Italy debut, but they've also the start of their kickboxing division.
All right.
Wow. And apparently the gate was like $1 million.
And so, to get this clear, the kickboxing division is going to take place in the cage?
Yeah, that's how it's gonna go.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Has anything like that ever happened?
Kickboxing in a cage. I'd like to say that that Michael Bisping participated in some similar promotion, and in his early days in the UK,
but
possibly.
But that might have been a very small organization, and they're just sort of maybe, trying to put on this multi sort of discipline card.
Yeah, I think part of the thing is that Scott Coker, being that visionary, helping, promote K1 at one point in the U.S., he's thinking that I think he's still got this idea in his head that these hybrid cars could have some success. But another thing I was talking with Robert with, was that the fact that kickboxing's never really caught on with American audiences. We saw that with Dynamite. Glory didn't really catch on. The Glory portion of the card didn't really catch on really well. But something we were talking about, the Fight Club OC that puts on fights regularly in Orange County, their hybrid cards are boxing and MMA. When, of course, we do know that even though boxing's glory days are probably behind them, it's especially with Mayweather Pacquiao. It's still got a little bit of a popularity. It's still got a little bit of a presence. So in terms of boxing, I don't. You can maybe do that, and considering that Spike does have boxing on it, that's a possibility. But something else that I was also talking with Robert about is the fact that some of the Japanese hybrid cards have put MMA and pro wrestling on there. And, of course, you have to remember that line between fake and real in Japan with pro wrestling and MMA, that line's a lot more blurred, whereas here it's been more of a concrete line because, pro wrestling has been pretty with the
it's an open secret.
It's an open secret. Pro wrestling, they don't really like to. They like to keep it fake, whereas UFC under Dana White, he's been like to keep it real, even though there's been some crossover stars here and there. But that's something maybe they should consider. You already had a ring, so why not? So why not have pro wrestlers go into it? The only problem, of course, now is that there isn't pro wrestling on Spike. It's TNA's they
moved on,
TNA's moved on, and it's also not what it used to be. But it's a possibility. I don't know. Maybe if they want to get like Ring of Honor or something like that, or Global Force Wrestling. There's a few different promotions you could possibly sign to Spike if that's what they're interested in. But maybe they might be putting all their eggs in the Bellator basket.
It can also be a cultural thing where you don't know if in Japan. I mean, and I get the feeling that in Japan, the audiences that enjoy MMA and professional wrestling are they
and kickboxing.
They're interchangeable a lot more than they are.
Oh yeah. It's if you're willing to watch pro wrestling, you're gonna watch MMA, and you're gonna. The fans in Japan are a lot more fluid because they just like combat of any sort. And they'll also be willing to watch sumo, which is why at one point Akebono was very popular there. And it's just.
And here you have you don't really have. As much, you don't find that MMA fans are big wrestling fans or vice versa. It's not a rule necessarily. Yeah,
it's one of those things where there's more concrete fan bases as compared to, like I said, Japan, where the fans are a lot more fluid. Yeah. But anyway, so
seeing a hybrid card with kickboxing in a cage will be interesting, fascinating.
It'll definitely be. But anyway, so that was a little bit of a review on the Bellator 152 Italy card, which appeared on tape delay on Spike. But then and I have a feeling that maybe they're trying to draw some of the audiences away from. I have a feeling they were trying to draw some of the audiences away from, maybe away from the UFC on Fox, even though the UFC on Fox would probably get a better draw. But anyways, so what's happening this weekend, they're going to the Mohegan Sun Center in Uncasville, Connecticut, I but yeah, that's one of their regular places they go to. Bellator 153, Koreshkov versus Henderson. As I said, this is going to be Benson Henderson's debut, and because he fought his last few fights at welterweight, he's actually competing for the welterweight title in Bellator against the champion Andrei Koreshkov.
Okay.
And that's the main event, and so kind of. We'll see how that goes. It's possible that Henderson, going against kind of untested welterweight, could win the fight. I still think he should probably go down to lightweight because that's just his more natural weight class. But one thing also to remember is that in Bellator, they've kind of gotten into this habit of maybe allowing like lighter fighters to fight in those weight classes where it's more like their walk around weight instead of their ideal fight weight. Like Alexander Shlemenko, I think he'd probably be better he'd probably be better fighting at like something like at welterweight instead of
what that might be is them letting the fighters sort of dictate at what weight they're most comfortable fighting instead of saying, hey, you know what? No, this fight needs to happen at this, and you need to find a way to make weight to here. I feel like there might be a little bit more sort of wiggle room in terms of like, hey, where do you think you might be able to? Where would you like to come in a couple months? Where
Oh yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
Whereas in the UFC, the standards might be a little bit more stringent. It's like,
and on top of that, in the UFC, it's a matter of you compete where you could be competitive at, and most of the time fighters are going to be
trying to put fights together.
Yeah, most of the time the fighters are going to be coming down in weight. So,
I mean, what else you got lined up for us, Matt? I think we're nearing the end here, seeing the horizon on the.
Okay, so this is the last thing we're going to be going at. It's going to be the preview for UFC 197.
UFC 197 this weekend.
Yes, it's good, and it's got two title fights. John Jones will still be competing for a title, but it's going to be the interim UFC light heavyweight title after Cormier sustained a foot injury, and so he's going to be fighting Ovin St. Preux.
Ovin St. Preux versus John Jones. Interesting matchup. One that, I don't know if you're on board, but I think Jones has been so historically dominant in the division that it's hard not to see him coming out.
I don't see him.
Ovin St. Preux's a
fine fighter, definitely coming up. He's definitely got a future in the sport. Maybe someday he will he will get a title, but I don't see him coming away with it against this fight against Jones either. Maybe if he fought Cormier, maybe that could happen. But
and the other title fight is Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, Mighty Mouse versus Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo in 2008 won the lightest division in freestyle wrestling in the Olympics.
So this is someone with serious pedigree.
Yes, with a serious pedigree. And of note is that he's actually he started out life as a illegal immigrant.
What?
Yeah. So he rose up from kind of that, and apparently, according to him, most throughout high school, he shared a room with anybody and everybody. He was like one of 5 or 6 kids or something like that. And so it's very inspirational to see him come from where he was to where he is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely an inspirational story. And he's, going up against one of the.
Well, he's also going against a guy who has a pretty inspirational story in and of itself as well. Mighty Mouse was a preemie, had an abusive father and abusive stepfather and deaf mother, has never so much as seen an image of his biological father. So, they both got inspirational stories, definitely. But
life takes people down a winding road, and these are two men that find themselves across each other this Saturday, and hopefully they'll put on a fun competitive match. And if what you're saying about Cejudo is the truth, and that he's actually he's an elite level athlete, or has been an elite level athlete. Might this be one of the greater tests that Mighty Mouse has seen come down the pipe in a while?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that I knew that sooner or later, Cejudo kept winning, then he was going to both of these men are undefeated at flyweight. I knew that at some point or another.
He might find himself in
he might find himself in a title fight, and this is the point that he's at. And this is probably one of those fights where maybe he could have gone another fight or two, but it made the most sense because he's the only top contender that he hasn't fight, except for maybe Suero da Silva, who keeps having issues here and there with like injuries and whatnot. But this is definitely his greatest test to date, I think, and hopefully he'll deliver. And we'll see how that goes.
What
then
else we got on the card?
Anthe Pettis will be fighting Ensid Barboza, and Pettis, as we know, former flyweight champions, kind of fallen on harder times. He's currently on 2-fight losing skid. He only fought once in last year against Rafael Dos Anjos, and then he lost in January to Eddie Alvarez. So he's on a 2-fight losing skid. So
he's hoping to bounce back this weekend, and that's sort of those are 3 fights at the top of the card that are big name fighters facing.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have middleweight. We have Robert Whitaker versus Rafael Natal. These guys are kind of two
more newbies.
Yeah, and then Yair Rodriguez versus Andre Fili. Rodriguez was on, I can't remember if it was the first of this. It was the first season of the Ultimate Fighter Latin America, and he won the featherweight competition, and he's got a pretty unorthodox fighting style. He does some of these like flying kicks and stuff like that, but he's winning, and he's still in the UFC, so that's better than some Ultimate Fighter winners, especially on the regional circuit. Then on the prelims have some pretty name fighters as well. Anthony's little brother Sergio is fighting on the prelims against Chris Kalidas. And then the other notable fight is former strawweight champion Carla Esparza is coming back for the first time since her fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk against Juliana Lima.
Okay.
And I can't remember what exactly it was, but Carla got some kind of injury, which is why she went to shoulder surgery, which is why she was
step away from it.
Well, understandable considering the just massive beating she got at the hands of Joanna. Like I said, that was one of those fights that was hard to watch, just because of watching. It's almost like it was like a mercy stoppage. It's just like, oh my gosh.
You're obviously not going to come back. We'll just go ahead and cut this
out. It was just, it was one of those things where it was hard to watch. It was a mercy stoppage. And it's like, you kind of wish that almost one of those knockouts that, that actually happens in women's MMA actually happened, but it didn't. So, I just noticed that Joanna Jędrzejczyk seems to have more of a tendency to destroy her opponents rather than knock them out. And why, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the fact that as a strawweight, as a big strawweight, she doesn't really have the knockout power.
Seeing clean, in spite of the Rousey debacle against Holm, seeing a clean knockout of you and I've talked before.
Well, and even also the Rousey knockout of Bete Correa.
Yeah, right, those are aberrations. Those are not exactly commonplace.
Yeah, we saw live the beating that what's her name took from Cyborg, where officially it was a knockout, but she just got whooped.
Mauled.
Yeah, she got mauled. She was a mess by the time the fight ended.
Things like that do make it hard to watch. Just taking punishment and more punishment and more punishment. You go, oh goodness, go ahead and just cut it out now.
Stop.
It's fine. That's we've seen enough.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty cool card this weekend, man.
Yeah, it's a pretty good card, and on the Fight Pass prelim, Ephraim Escudero is gonna be fighting Kevin Lee.
All right.
And Efrain being a season 8 winner. And he's kind of dipped in and out of the UFC a little bit because he won that first season, but then he didn't do so well in his first run. I can't remember if this is his second or third run, but he's one of those fighters who seems to be able to dip in and out, just depending on things. So yeah, so that's I think that's all the news that we got for today and all the previews and whatnot. So we'll get back together next week.
Yes.
And talk on a time when there's not really anything going on. There might be maybe an Access TV fight, but
we'll have results from this weekend stuff.
Yes, and then we could maybe casually talk about what's going on with Invicta FC on the 7th. So we'll see what's. So that's it. I'd say.
One last thing. What do you think about AJ Styles being the Money in the Bank, having money in the Money in the Bank briefcase right now?
What do you mean having the Money in the Bank?
Well, you know what the Money in the Bank?
Yes, I know what Money in the Bank is, but I don't.
Styles, doesn't he have it right now?
No, he didn't win that. He won the number 1 contenders match. He didn't win the.
I was under the impression he had the Money in the Bank.
No, he did not win Money in the Bank. He won a number 1. He won a fatal 4-way number 1 contenders match, and he's going to be facing
Roman Reigns at the next pay-per-view.
Yes, at the next pay-per-view, which is going to It's kind of funny because Styles is pretty new to the WWE,
but he's actually a good wrestler.
Yeah, he is. But
Roman Reigns.
Yeah, well, that on top of that, he's got that more indie high flying offense that people love, and we knew from day one when he came into the Royal Rumble that he was over with the audience. Yeah. So, and he's already saying, well, it's kind of weird though with his Bullet Club members kind of attacking Roman Reigns right afterwards. It's like, what? What's happening? Are they working with you, or what's going on here?
Yeah. The world of wrestling.
Yeah, it's very unpredictable. But yeah, AJ Styles going in there, is taking on Roman Reigns, who biologically is not The Rock's cousin, despite what people would have you think. I don't
married in.
I don't know if you know about this, but there's this thing apparently in Samoan culture where you become blood brothers. Okay. Basically, it's similar to that. It's similar to that Native American thing where you cut your palms and go.
Yeah, sure.
Manly handshake, but it's. It's a wrestling family and they're blood brothers, but they're not biologically related.
Oh, okay. He's still definitely got enough pull to get him all the way to the tippy top of the roster.
Well, actually, people have been saying that he was kind of more pushed because of his relation to The Rock.
Well, that's what I figured. I mean, that's what I figured. Yeah.
Well, and another thing is that people for the longest time have been wanting him to turn heel, and it's almost like it's very slow heel turn. It's like
Roman Reigns.
Yeah, it's almost like because he's kind of taking this
super lame face.
Yeah, he's taking his stance of I don't care about being liked. I want to be respected because people have been booing him for a while. Yeah, whereas AJ Styles, everybody loves AJ Styles.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So
we'll see if they take advantage of AJ's popularity. Yet they can be maybe sometimes too patient.
And it would be interesting if they actually did gave AJ Styles the championship this early into his WWE run.
I mean, he was the marquee guy in TNA. He was the top face of TNA. That was a TNA product, I guess.
Yes.
Sting was there, Kurt Angle was there, but those guys were guys who had cut their bones elsewhere.
Yeah.
With the exception of like Abyss. You know what I mean? I can't think of anybody.
I'm not sure if I could ever take Abyss serious.
I mean, no, nor could I. But I think he was champion there a few times. And so it's this thing where it's like maybe Samoa Joe. Those are maybe the names from TNA that you go, oh, those are guys that came from TNA. That
Samoa Joe, who currently is still in NXT. I don't know. I don't understand why a guy like Samoa Joe has to go through NXT. I really don't. Vince
McMahon has been weird about fat wrestlers before. He made Kevin Owens. He made Kevin Owens lose, I think, a decent amount of weight before he started taking him seriously or considered him for
Yeah.
like, the main roster and stuff like that. He's still sort of a chunky dude, but I think he had a much more of a pot belly, but even more so before. So,
Yeah.
but it's awesome to see him, use the WrestleMania and all that stuff. So it was pretty awesome to see that.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering when are they gonna put Bailey onto the main roster?
Is that a girl?
Yeah.
She's from TNA.
No, she's a homegrown. I think she was on indie scene before she got picked up by for NXT, but she apparently had this rivalry between herself, Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and who's the Irish girl? Who's the Irish girl?
Sorry, I don't know the women's division that well anymore.
Why am I drawing a blank?
Spit it out.
My default.
So what are the first three? Sasha Banks.
Becky Lynch.
Okay.
But it's so there's that whole thing.
All right, so we let ourselves get carried away with the wrestling talk there for a little bit. Have a little
Well,
fun.
I don't. As Brian Zane of Wrestling Regret says, MMA and pro wrestling are kind of almost relatives in a way because they do stem from that whole original catch wrestling.
Yeah.
And
I think I don't know that a lot of people will admit it. I will. And I don't know that I consciously considered it beforehand, but really, I think that MMA in a lot of ways was a natural progression of the instincts that you had that made you enjoy professional wrestling as a child. In that you're a kid, you presumably thought wrestling was real growing up and watching it. If you did watch it and grow up watching it and enjoy it, and all that is in essence is like you said, competition. And then you grow up and you find out that maybe it's not real, and then MMA comes along, just happened to come along in our lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And we get to enjoy we get to have that same sort of feeling of a championship bout, an anticipated championship bout, except this time it's real, the real deal. And so I feel like a lot of those emotions that are tied up with how people enjoyed professional wrestling growing up is now how they sort of channel that through mixed martial arts.
Well, I come from, I've never been shy about saying this. I come from more of a Japanese combat environment style mentality where the two were pretty. The line between the two was blurred. Yeah. They were definitely still separate, but there was definitely also that contendership. I mean, if you talk like at times when they do those lead up promos to right before a match in Pride or K1, they'd mention people's pro wrestling backgrounds.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's partially also the fact that and I've also been to Japanese pro wrestling events, and the environment's very much different. Even though it's still kind of a big spectacle show type thing, you don't have these weird backstage segments. It's not in stuff
it's just
like
match after match.
It's treated like an actual sport as compared to a as compared to a show. It's not like It feels more like a sporting event as compared to an American pro wrestling, especially WWE, that feels kind of more like this big old theater type
carnival show. Almost.
Yeah, which is ironic considering that's the original origin.
Yeah,
but anyways, so they'll do interviews, they'll do stuff like that, and I don't recall them actually doing anything where they would come into the middle of the ring and blah 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 blah. Those little
crazy promos.
It was they go in, they do their matches, they get out.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what they do, except for maybe one or two things afterwards or something like that. But it was pretty
cut and dry.
It was pretty cut and dry. It was pretty much like a it was like I said, it was kind of like a sporting event. It was like a sporting event. It was kind of like reminded me very much of the MMA events when we go. They'll do the occasional post-fight interview and stuff like that. And so.
Crazy stuff. All right, Matt. Well, that leaves us at the end of episode 20. Catch us on Twitter. I'm @10_V.
I'm at Matthew Salzer.
The site's Twitter is at MMA Freakout.
Yes, and just the shout out to Robert R.C. Samuel of Fanboy Nation.
Yes,
I think his Twitter handle is the actual @Fanboy Nation.
All right.
So if you want to, he does some good stuff too, and it's not just. He also doesn't just do MMA related stuff. He also does entertainment type stuff. So go out and check that out as well.
Shout out to Tom Heffernan. Sorry we haven't.
Oh yeah, at Heffy Jr. or at he's got an alternate. It's like I think it's like at Heffy67 or something
like that. But Heffy Jr. is fine.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Yep. And so have a good day.
See you next week.